After 32 years of chasing criminals, solving cases, and climbing the ranks to detective chief, Raymond Chen finally hung up his badge. The retirement party was nice, the gold watch was beautiful, but what Ray was really looking forward to was something simple, a quieter life by the beach with his wife Carol. They'd been talking about it for years. The kids were grown and settled in their own lives. The big house in Riverside Meadows with its 4 bedrooms and massive yard didn't make sense anymore. Carol had found a perfect little condo right on the coast, with a balcony overlooking the ocean. They could hear the waves, take morning walks, and finally just breathe. But first they had to deal with 3 decades worth of stuff. Ray stood in his garage on a Tuesday afternoon, looking at the mountains of boxes, old furniture, tools he'd bought for projects he never started, and enough kitchen gadgets to stock a small restaurant. Carol poked her head in from the kitchen door. "Honey, we are not taking that broken elliptical machine to the new place." Ray laughed. "I was going to fix it. You said that 5 years ago." Carol walked over and squeezed his hand. "We need to let go of some things. Fresh start, remember?" She was right, of course. She usually was. That's when Ray got the idea for an estate sale. Not a garage sale. Those were for selling a few random items. An estate sale was bigger, more organized. They could clear out everything they didn't need, make some money, and maybe help some families find good deals on quality stuff. Ray spent the next week researching. He wasn't the type to jump into anything without doing his homework. Old habits from the job, he supposed. He checked the city ordinances online, pulled up the county regulations, and even printed out a copy of the Homeowners Association bylaws. He'd always kept a copy filed away, though he'd never really needed it before. Everything checked out. Residents were allowed to hold estate sales twice per year. You just had to keep it to your own property. Limit it to 2 days and post signs only on your own lawn, not on street poles or mailboxes. Easy enough. He reserved the weekend 2 weeks out, Saturday and Sunday, 8 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. Carol started sorting through everything, pricing items fairly. Ray printed flyers and posted them on neighborhood social media groups and local sale websites. He even made nice signs for the yard. By Thursday evening, everything was ready. The garage was organized like a small store. The dining room furniture they'd been meaning to replace was tagged and ready. Boxes of books, old electronics, garden tools, kitchen items, all clean, organized, and priced to sell. Ray was hauling one last box when Carol called out from the front door. "Honey, there's something in the mail slot." He walked over, wiping dust off his hands. Carol handed him a fancy envelope, the kind with a little plastic window and an official-looking stamp. Ray's detective instincts kicked in immediately. Certified mail on a Thursday evening. Someone hand-delivered this. He opened it carefully. Inside was a letter typed on HOA letterhead, signed by Brenda Whitmore, the Homeowners Association president. "Dear Mr. Chen," it began in bold letters, "it has come to the attention of the HOA board that you are planning an unauthorized commercial activity on your property this weekend. Estate sales are not permitted under community standards and regulations. This letter serves as official notice that you must cancel this event immediately. Failure to comply will result in fines of $500 per day, plus potential legal action. Sincerely, Brenda Whitmore, HOA president." Ray read it twice, then a third time. Carol looked over his shoulder. "Can she do that?" Carol asked, worry creeping into her voice. Ray walked to his home office and pulled out his copy of the HOA bylaws. He flipped to Section 7, Subsection 3, right there in black and white. "Residents may conduct estate sales or moving sales up to 2 times per calendar year, not exceeding 2 consecutive days per event." He grabbed a yellow highlighter and marked the passage. Then he checked the section numbers Brenda had cited in her letter. Section 12, Subsection 5. That was about parking regulations. Section 18, Subsection 2. That covered pool rules. Neither had anything to do with estate sales. "She's bluffing," Ray said quietly. Carol frowned. "Are you sure? Maybe we should just call it off. We don't need the headache." Ray understood her concern. Carol had always been the peaceful one, the one who avoided conflict. But he'd spent 3 decades dealing with people who used intimidation and false authority to push others around. He recognized the pattern. "We're within our rights, Carol. Everything's legal. Everything's by the book. But she's the HOA president. Don't they have power to—" "Only the power the bylaws give them," Ray interrupted gently. and the bylaws are clear. We're good. Still, something bothered him about the letter. Ray had dealt with enough power-hungry people in his career to know when someone was overstepping. He opened his laptop and started digging. A quick search of the neighborhood Facebook group showed he wasn't the first person Brenda had targeted. 3 months ago, the Martinez family had posted about canceling their moving sale after HOA threats. Last year, the Johnsons had complained about being fined for having a birthday party in their backyard. Brenda claimed it violated noise ordinances, even though it ended at 7 in the evening. The more Ray dug, the clearer the picture became. Brenda Whitmore had been HOA president for 4 years. She'd run unopposed in the last 3 elections, mainly because nobody else wanted the job. And she ran the association like her personal kingdom. Ray drafted a polite but firm email response. He cited the exact bylaw that permitted his sale, attached photos of his property showing compliance with all regulations, and included references to state laws about HOA powers. He kept his tone professional but made it clear he knew his rights. Carol read over his shoulder as he typed. "You're really going through with this?" Ray turned and took her hands. "Honey, I've spent 32 years standing up to people who break the rules and think they're above the law. I'm not about to back down from someone who's abusing a little bit of neighborhood authority." He smiled softly. "Besides, we need to get rid of that elliptical machine." That got a small laugh from Carol. "Okay, but if this turns into a big thing..." "It won't," Ray assured her. "Trust me. I've seen this behavior before. Bullies fold when someone actually stands up to them." He hit send on the email and closed the laptop. Friday would be prep day, and Saturday morning they'd open for business. Ray had faced down armed suspects, corrupt officials, and some of the worst criminals in the city. He certainly wasn't going to be intimidated by an overzealous HOA president. What Ray didn't know yet was that Brenda Whitmore didn't back down easily. And she definitely didn't like being told no. As Ray and Carol headed to bed that Thursday night, everything seemed manageable. Just a small neighborhood dispute that would blow over once Brenda realized she was wrong. But Ray's phone buzzed at 11:30 that night. A text from his neighbor, George, 2 houses down. "Hey man, just saw Brenda walking around your property with a flashlight and her phone out, taking pictures of your sale signs. Thought you should know." Ray looked at the message, then glanced at Carol, who was already asleep. He quietly got up, walked to the window, and peered out at the dark street. This wasn't going to be as simple as he'd hoped. Friday morning started earlier than Ray planned. He'd barely slept after seeing George's text about Brenda snooping around his property in the middle of the night. Carol made coffee while Ray rechecked everything one more time. Signs properly placed on his own lawn. Items all organized on his property. Permits? Not needed for estate sales, but he had documentation proving everything was legal anyway. "Maybe she'll just leave us alone now," Carol said hopefully. Pouring cream into her mug, Ray wanted to believe that, but his gut told him different. That gut feeling had saved his life more than once on the job. He was right to trust it. At 9:30 in the morning, Ray was in the garage arranging the last few boxes when he heard a car door slam. Then another, and another. He walked to the driveway and saw Brenda Whitmore marching toward his house like a general leading troops into battle. Behind her were 2 other people, Ted Palmer and Joyce Kim, both members of the HOA board. Brenda wore a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than Ray's first car. She clutched a leather folder against her chest like it was some kind of shield. Her heels clicked sharply against the concrete driveway. Ted and Joyce looked uncomfortable, walking a few steps behind her like they weren't entirely sure they wanted to be there. "Mr. Chen," Brenda's voice rang out loud enough that several neighbors turned to look. Ray noticed old Mrs. Patterson across the street peek through her curtains. 2 houses down, George stepped out onto his porch with his coffee mug. Ray walked down his driveway calmly. Years of training had taught him that staying calm was the best way to handle confrontation. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore." "Don't good morning me." She stopped at the edge of his driveway. "I sent you a letter. I sent you an email response to your ridiculous attempt to justify breaking the rules. And yet here you are still planning this. This circus," Ray kept his voice level. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'd be happy to discuss this. Would you like to come up to the porch? We can talk privately. I don't need privacy. I want everyone to hear this." She gestured broadly at the neighbors who were definitely watching now. "This sale is not happening tomorrow. Period. Ted cleared his throat behind her. Brenda, maybe we should. Be quiet, Ted. She didn't even look at him. Her eyes stayed locked on Ray. Mr. Chen, I have been president of this HOA for 4 years. I have kept property values high. I have maintained standards. And I will not allow you to turn this neighborhood into some kind of flea market. Carol appeared at the front door, worry written all over her face. Ray gave her a small nod that meant, it's okay. Mrs. Whitmore, I've checked the bylaws very carefully. Section 7, subsection 3 clearly allows estate sales twice per year. I'm following every rule. The sale is on my property, it's limited to 2 days, and I don't care what you think you read, Brenda interrupted. As president, I have the authority to interpret those bylaws, and my interpretation is that your sale violates community standards. Ray felt that familiar tightness in his jaw, the same feeling he got when a suspect lied straight to his face. That's not how bylaws work. They're not open to interpretation when they're clearly written. Are you a lawyer, Mr. Chen? No, but then you're not qualified to interpret legal documents. Brenda pulled a paper from her folder with a flourish. This is a cease and desist order. If you proceed with this sale, you will be fined $500 per day. If you refuse to pay, we will place a lien on your property. And if you continue to violate HOA regulations, we will take legal action to force compliance. Joyce shifted uncomfortably. Brenda, I don't think we actually voted on. The board gave me authority to handle violations as I see fit. Brenda's voice was ice cold. Ted spoke up again, more firmly this time. Actually, Brenda, I looked at the bylaws last night after I got your email. Mr. Chen is right. Estate sales are permitted. Brenda whipped around to face him. Whose side are you on, Ted? I'm on the side of following our own rules, Ted said quietly. I didn't agree to come here this morning to threaten anyone. I came because you said we needed to clarify some regulations. For just a second, Brenda's perfect composure cracked. But she recovered quickly and turned back to Ray. Fine. You want to play games with the rules? Let's talk about the traffic, the noise, the strangers coming through our neighborhood, the safety concerns. It's one weekend, Ray said, and everything will be on my property. You're bringing in dozens of random people. What about security? What about safety? What if someone gets hurt on your property? What if someone robs one of the other houses while they're pretending to be a customer? Ray almost laughed. After 3 decades of law enforcement, he probably knew more about neighborhood safety than Brenda ever would. But he kept that to himself. Mrs. Whitmore, I understand your concerns, but estate sales happen in neighborhoods all over this city every weekend. They're legal, they're normal, and when done properly, they're perfectly safe. Well, not in my neighborhood, they don't. Brenda stepped closer, her voice dropping but somehow becoming more menacing. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Mr. Chen. I have shut down 6 unauthorized sales in the past 2 years. 6 families who thought they could just do whatever they wanted, and every single one of them backed down. There it was, the real issue. This wasn't about rules or safety or property values. This was about control, about Brenda getting her way. Those families probably didn't know their rights, Ray said quietly. Or maybe they were smart enough to avoid a legal battle they couldn't win. Brenda thrust the cease and desist letter toward him. Last chance, Mr. Chen. Cancel this sale or face the consequences. Ray didn't take the paper. I'll be opening tomorrow morning at 8, as planned. The look on Brenda's face was something between shock and fury. Probably nobody had said no to her in years. Fine. She practically spat the word. But don't say I didn't warn you. When the police show up tomorrow to shut down your illegal operation, remember this conversation. When you're writing checks for thousands in fines, remember you had a chance to avoid this. She turned on her heel and stormed back to her car. Ted and Joyce lingered for a moment. Ted gave Ray an apologetic look. I'm sorry about this. I'll be talking to the other board members. This isn't right. Thank you, Ray said simply. After they left, Carol came down from the porch. Ray, I'm scared. What if she really does call the police? What if she can call whoever she wants? Ray put his arm around his wife. The police will see we're following the law, and that'll be the end of it. What Ray didn't say out loud was that he was actually hoping Brenda would call the police, because when she did, things were going to get very interesting. That afternoon, Ray made a phone call to an old friend from the department, just to give them a heads up about a possible call. He also sent a quick email to 3 other families in the neighborhood who'd been bullied by Brenda. He had a feeling they might want to know what was happening. By evening, the word had spread through the neighborhood. Ray's doorbell rang 6 times with neighbors stopping by to offer support. Mrs. Patterson brought cookies. George offered to help manage traffic during the sale. Even the young couple at the end of the street who'd only moved in 3 months ago stopped by to say they'd be customers tomorrow. Everyone's excited, Carol said as they closed up for the night. Half the neighborhood is planning to come, Ray smiled. Good, let them come. Everything's going to be fine. But as Ray set his alarm for 6 the next morning, he knew one thing for certain. Brenda Whitmore wasn't done. And tomorrow morning was going to be memorable. He just hoped Carol wouldn't be too upset when she found out exactly how memorable it was going to be. Saturday. Morning came with clear blue skies and a perfect breeze. Ray was up at 6 double-checking everything one last time. Carol made breakfast, though neither of them ate much. The nerves were real, even for someone who'd spent decades dealing with dangerous situations. By 7:30, early bird shoppers were already parking along the street. Ray recognized Mrs. Patterson shuffling over with her walker. George and his wife came up the driveway. A young couple with a baby stroller browsed the furniture displayed in the open garage. Everything's priced clearly, Carol told them, her voice steadier now that things were actually happening. If you have questions, just ask. At exactly 8 o'clock, Ray officially opened the sale. Within 15 minutes, there were about 20 people browsing. The old dining room set caught someone's eye immediately. A college student was thrilled to find the barely used bookshelf for $30. The kitchen gadgets Carol had collected over the years were flying off the tables. Ray was helping an elderly gentleman load a toolbox into his trunk when he heard the sound. The aggressive revving of an engine, tires squealing slightly. He turned to see Brenda's black luxury sedan come to an abrupt stop right in front of his house. She burst out of the car with her phone already up, recording video. This is Brenda Whitmore, president of Riverside Meadows HOA. Today is October 19th, and I am documenting illegal commercial activity at 417 Oakmont Drive. People stopped browsing and stared. The college kid with the bookshelf looked confused. Mrs. Patterson shook her head in disgust. Brenda marched right into Ray's driveway, still filming. I am documenting all individuals participating in this unauthorized event. You are all on camera. You are all witnesses to HOA violations. Carol grabbed Ray's arm. What is she doing? Making a scene, Ray said quietly. Years of staying calm under pressure kicked in. He walked toward Brenda with his hands visible and his voice steady. Mrs. Whitmore, you're welcome to observe from the street, but you're currently on my property and disrupting my sale. Your illegal sale, she corrected, still filming. She turned to address the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, this event was not approved by the Homeowners Association. By participating, you may be contributing to violations of community regulations. A middle-aged woman who'd been looking at lamps frowned. Is this true? Is this sale illegal? No, ma'am, Ray answered calmly. This is a legal estate sale permitted under both city ordinances and HOA bylaws. I'm happy to show you the documentation if you'd like. Don't listen to him, Brenda snapped. He's trying to twist the rules. I have legal authority here. The woman with the lamp set it down and walked away nervously. The young couple with the stroller exchanged glances and headed back to their car. Within 2 minutes, half the customers had left. Brenda smiled triumphantly. She walked to the end of the driveway, positioned herself right at the property line, and stood there like a guard. Every time someone tried to enter, she'd step forward with her phone. Excuse me, sir, are you aware this is an unauthorized event? I'd hate for you to be involved in legal proceedings. Ma'am, the HOA has documented your vehicle. You might want to reconsider. Just so you know, I'm required to report all participants to the board. It was textbook intimidation. Ray had seen it 1,000 times in his career. The tactics were different, but the goal was the same. Use fear and uncertainty to control people. George walked up to Ray. Man, this is ridiculous. Want me to call the cops? Ray shook his head slightly. Not yet. Let her dig her hole a little deeper. But Carol had had enough. She walked right up to Brenda. You need to leave now. I'm standing on HOA common property, Brenda said smugly. The edges of everyone's driveways are technically association property for maintenance purposes. Look it up. You're harassing people and blocking access to our sale. I'm informing people of violations. That's my job as president. Carol looked back at Ray, frustrated and upset. He could see tears forming in her eyes. That made his jaw tighten. Brenda could come after him all she wanted, but making his wife cry crossed a line. Ray pulled out his phone and made a call. Brenda saw him and laughed. "Oh, calling the police? Perfect. They'll shut this whole thing down and I'll watch you get cited." Ray didn't respond. He just spoke calmly into the phone, gave his address, and explained the situation. Professional. Brief. No emotion. When he hung up, Brenda was practically glowing with satisfaction. "This is going to be good. I cannot wait to see the look on your face when the officers tell you to pack it all up." "We'll see," was all Ray said. The wait felt longer than it actually was. Maybe 15 minutes. Carol stood next to Ray, holding his hand tight. A few brave neighbors stayed, including George and Mrs. Patterson. The college kid with the bookshelf was still there too, sitting on the curb like he was watching a reality show. 2 police cruisers pulled up, not sirens but definitely visible. 4 officers stepped out. Brenda rushed toward them immediately, her phone still recording everything. "Officers, thank you so much for responding. I'm Brenda Whitmore, HOA president. This man is conducting an illegal estate sale in direct violation of community regulations. I need this shut down immediately and all these people removed from the property." The first officer, a woman in her mid-30s with sergeant stripes on her uniform, looked past Brenda toward the house. Then her face changed. Just slightly, but Ray caught it. "Recognition. Mrs. Whitmore, is it?" the sergeant said professionally. "Yes, and I'm filing an official complaint. This sale needs to end right now." The sergeant walked past Brenda, heading straight for Ray. Brenda followed, still talking. "I've documented everything. I have video evidence." I sent him multiple warnings. He refused to comply with HOA authority. The sergeant stopped in front of Ray. For a second, nobody said anything. Then she smiled. Just a little. "Chief Chen, good to see you, sir." The word seemed to echo. Chief Brenda's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Sergeant Rivera." Ray nodded. "How's the new position treating you?" "Very well, sir. Congratulations on your retirement." She glanced at Carol. "Mrs. Chen, nice to see you again." The second officer stepped forward. A younger guy Ray didn't recognize immediately. "Detective Chief Chen, you trained my academy class 4 years ago." "Officer Patterson." "Patterson, right. You were top of your class if I remember correctly." Brenda finally found her voice. "Chief, Detective Chief?" Sergeant Rivera turned to Brenda with complete professionalism. "Ma'am, we received a call about harassment and interference with legal activity. Can you explain what's happening here?" I'm the HOA president. This sale is against the rules." Ray stepped forward, his demeanor shifting just slightly. Not aggressive, not showy. Just the quiet confidence of someone who'd commanded respect for 3 decades. "Mrs. Whitmore, I tried to handle this the right way. I sent you documentation showing that my sale is completely legal under Section 7, Subsection 3 of the HOA bylaws. I also sent you the city ordinance numbers and the relevant case law regarding HOA overreach." He pulled out his phone and showed Sergeant Rivera an email. "I sent this to Mrs. Whitmore Thursday night. Full legal documentation. She chose to ignore it and instead chose to harass my customers and block access to my property." Brenda's face had gone pale. "I didn't know you were... that doesn't change the fact that..." "That what?" Ray's voice was calm but firm. The voice of someone who'd interviewed countless suspects and witnesses. "That you've been abusing your position? That you've collected unauthorized fines from 6 families in the past 2 years? That you've created rules that don't actually exist in the bylaws? You can't prove any of that." "Actually, I can." Ray held up a folder. "Before I retired 3 weeks ago, I asked a friend in forensic accounting to review the HOA finances. Public records that any homeowner can request. The discrepancies are significant. About $18,000 in unauthorized fines that went into an account only you control." George let out a low whistle. Mrs. Patterson muttered something. Under her breath, Sergeant Rivera looked at Brenda. "Ma'am, is this true?" Brenda looked around wildly. At the police. At the neighbors. At Ray, who stood there calm and collected. "This is harassment. He's using his position to intimidate me." "I don't have a position anymore," Ray said quietly. "I'm just a retired guy trying to have a legal estate sale." Sergeant Rivera stepped forward. "Mrs. Whitmore, you have 2 options. You can leave this property immediately, and we'll consider this resolved for today, or we can continue this conversation at the station." For a long moment, Brenda just stood there, shaking. Then, without another word, she practically ran to her car. The engine roared to life and she sped off down the street, taking the corner way too fast. The neighborhood was dead silent. The silence after Brenda's car disappeared around the corner lasted maybe 5 seconds. Then the college kid on the curb started clapping. Mrs. Patterson joined in. Within moments, the remaining neighbors were applauding and cheering. Sergeant Rivera shook her head with a slight smile. "Chief, I should have known you'd have everything documented." "Old habits," Ray said with a shrug. "Thanks for responding so quickly." "Any time, sir." She turned to Officer Patterson. "Come on, let's write up the report and let these folks get back to their sale." As the police cruisers pulled away, people started returning. The young couple with the stroller came back. Cars that had driven off earlier made U-turns and parked again. Within 20 minutes, the sale was busier than before. News travels fast in neighborhoods, and apparently half of Riverside Meadows wanted to support Ray after what they'd just witnessed. Carol squeezed Ray's hand. "You could have told me you were a detective, Chief." "I thought I did tell you," Ray said innocently. She swatted his arm playfully. "You know what I mean. You could have warned me about the big reveal." "Where's the fun in that?" The rest of Saturday went smoothly. Ray sold the old dining room set, the elliptical machine Carol had nagged him about, and probably 60% of everything they'd put out. But more importantly, people kept stopping by just to talk. Ted from the HOA board showed up around noon with his wife. "Ray, I owe you an apology. I should have stood up to Brenda months ago. She's been out of control." "It's not easy standing up to someone in authority," Ray said. "Even when you know they're wrong," Ted lowered his voice. "Between you and me, there are 3 other board members who are fed up with her. We've been talking about calling for a vote to remove her, but we were worried about retaliation. After today, though," he trailed off meaningfully. Around 2 o'clock, a woman in her 40s approached nervously. Ray recognized her from the neighborhood, but didn't know her name. "Mr. Chen, I'm Rebecca Torres. I live over on Pinewood Circle." "Nice to meet you, Rebecca. See anything you like?" She shook her head. "I actually came to thank you, and to ask you something." She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo of a letter. "Brenda fined me $1,500 last year. She said my daughter's graduation party violated noise ordinances. Even though it ended at 8 p.m. and we had permission from our immediate neighbors. I paid it because I was scared she'd put a lien on my house." Ray took the phone and read the letter carefully. The fine cited a noise ordinance that didn't exist in the bylaws. "Do you still have the receipt showing you paid?" "Yes, why?" "Because that fine was illegal. The bylaws have noise regulations, but they only apply after 10 p.m. on weekdays and 11 p.m. on weekends. An 8 p.m. graduation party doesn't violate anything." Rebecca's eyes widened. "So she just made it up?" "Looks that way. Can I get my money back?" Ray thought for a moment. "I'd need to look into it more, but probably yes." "Do you know anyone else she's done this to?" "At least 3 other families I can think of." Ray handed her his email address written on a piece of paper. "Send me what you have. I'm already documenting her pattern of behavior. The more evidence we have, the stronger the case." Rebecca actually had tears in her eyes. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means. I've been so angry about that money, but I didn't know what to do." After she left, Carol nudged Ray. "You're retired, remember? You're supposed to be relaxing on the beach." "Just helping out some neighbors," Ray said. "Besides, I haven't even moved to the beach yet." But Carol was smiling. She knew her husband. 32 years of seeking justice didn't just disappear because you turned in your badge. The sale wrapped up at 4 p.m. as planned. Ray and Carol had made just over $4,000, which was more than they'd expected. But the real victory was something else entirely. Sunday's sale was quieter but steady. People came by, bought things, and many stayed to chat. George brought Ray a beer around lunchtime. "Man, yesterday was something else. I wish I'd recorded Brenda's face when she realized who you were." "I'm just glad it's over," Carol said, but Ray knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Monday morning, his email inbox had 8 new messages, all from neighbors. All with stories about Brenda and her questionable fines and threats. One family had been charged $800 for having their garage door open during the day. Supposedly it was unsightly and violated appearance standards. Another had been threatened with legal action for planting roses in their front yard without HOA approval. Ray spent Monday afternoon organizing everything into a spreadsheet. Names, dates, amounts, violations cited, actual bylaw sections. The pattern was clear. Brenda had been systematically inventing rules and collecting fines for nearly 4 years. The total came to just over $22,000. Tuesday morning, Ray got a call from Ted. Emergency HOA board meeting tonight. 7 p.m. Can you come? Am I invited? You are now. All residents are technically allowed to attend board meetings. We're just bad about announcing them. Ted paused. Brenda submitted her resignation this morning. Ray sat up straighter. She did? Yep, email came in at 6 a.m., very brief. Just said she was stepping down effective immediately for personal reasons. Ted sighed. I think she knows what's coming. Joyce talked to a lawyer friend yesterday. If what you found is true, Brenda could face serious legal trouble. That evening, Ray and Carol walked to the community center where HOA meetings were held. Ray brought his folder of documentation. Carol brought cookies because that's the kind of person she was. The meeting room was packed. Ray counted at least 40 residents, which Ted later told him was about 10 times the normal attendance. Brenda's empty chair at the head table was like a ghost in the room. Ted called the meeting to order. Okay, everyone knows why we're here. We've received multiple complaints about improper fines and violations over the past 4 years. Mr. Chen has compiled evidence that we need to review. For the next hour, Ray walked the board through everything. He kept it factual, kept it calm, just presented the evidence. The fake violations, the invented rules, the money trail showing fines going into an account that only Brenda controlled. Joyce, the board member who'd looked so uncomfortable on Brenda's driveway Friday morning, spoke up. I had no idea. She always told us the fines were legitimate. She handled all the financial stuff herself. That's the problem, Ray said gently. No oversight. No checks and balances. One person shouldn't have that much control. An older man in the back raised his hand. So what happens now? Do we get our money back? Ted looked at Ray, who nodded. We'll need to hire a lawyer and a forensic accountant to do an official audit. But based on what I'm seeing, yes, improper fines should be refunded. The room erupted in conversation. People were angry, relieved, confused all at once. Rebecca Torres, the woman whose daughter's graduation party had been fined, stood up. I want to file a formal complaint. Not just about the money, about everything. She's been bullying this neighborhood for years and nobody felt like they could say anything. Several other people nodded in agreement. Ted held up his hands. Okay. One step at a time. First, we need to elect an interim president and get a full financial audit started. Second, we need to figure out the legal situation. Third, we need to revise our bylaws so this can never happen again. Ray stood up. If I can make a suggestion? Require board votes for any fines. Publish monthly financial statements. And create a complaint process that doesn't go through the president. That's perfect, Ted said, writing notes. Thank you, Ray. The meeting went on for another hour. By the end, Ted had been voted in as temporary president. A lawyer had been contacted, and 6 families had agreed to file formal complaints. As Ray and Carol walked home under the streetlights, Carol linked her arm through his. You couldn't just have a simple estate sale, could you? I tried, Ray protested. Brenda's the one who made it complicated. And now you're helping restructure the entire HOA. Just giving advice. Carol laughed. You're a terrible liar. You know that? Ray smiled. She was right, of course. But some habits were hard to break. When you'd spent your whole career fighting for what was right, retirement didn't change who you were. The question now was, what would happen to Brenda? And would the families actually get their money back? Ray had a feeling the next few weeks were going to be very interesting. The next 3 weeks moved faster than Ray expected. The HOA hired a lawyer and a forensic accountant just like they'd planned. Carol kept telling Ray he should focus on packing for their move, but he couldn't help staying involved. Too many years of seeing cases through to the end. The forensic accountant's report came back on a Thursday. Ray was in his garage taping up boxes when Ted called. You sitting down? Ted asked. Should I be? It's worse than we thought. $22,300 in unauthorized fines over 4 years. But that's not all. Brenda was also inflating vendor costs and pocketing the difference. Lawn care, pool maintenance, parking lot repairs. She'd get a quote for $2,000, tell the board it was $3,000 and keep the extra. Ray let out a low whistle. How much total? North of $38,000. That's felony theft. Yeah, the lawyer says we have grounds for criminal charges, but it's up to the families if they want to press charges or settle civilly. Ray thought about that for a moment. What's Brenda saying? Her lawyer reached out. She wants to settle. Full restitution plus interest. Community service. And she agrees to never serve on any HOA board again, anywhere. In exchange for? No criminal charges. Ray understood the calculation. A criminal case could take years and cost a fortune in legal fees. A settlement meant families got their money back quickly, and Brenda faced consequences without the neighborhood having to endure a long trial. What do the families want? We're voting tomorrow night. But honestly, most people just want their money back and want her gone. After hanging up, Ray found Carol in the kitchen wrapping dishes in newspaper. Settlement offer from Brenda. Carol looked up. Good. Maybe now we can finally focus on our move. She had a point. Their closing date on the beach condo was 2 weeks away, and they still had a house full of stuff. But Ray couldn't shake the feeling that Brenda was getting off too easy. The next evening's HOA meeting was even more packed than the last one. Ray counted at least 60 people. Every family that had been fined showed up. Ted presented the settlement offer and opened the floor for discussion. Rebecca Torres spoke first. I want my $1,500 back. But more than that, I want to make sure she can never do this to anyone else. If the settlement guarantees both those things, I'm in favor. Others nodded. An older gentleman who'd been fined for having his garage door open too much raised his hand. What about the community service? What does that mean exactly? The HOA lawyer, a sharp woman in her 50s named Catherine Park, stood up. 200 hours at a nonprofit organization. It'll be supervised and documented. If she doesn't complete it, the settlement is void and criminal charges can be filed. I like that, someone said from the back. One by one, families spoke. Some wanted to push for criminal charges. Most just wanted to move on. In the end, the vote was 31 in favor of the settlement, 9 against. Ray didn't vote. He hadn't actually been fined, but he understood both sides. Justice wasn't always about punishment. Sometimes it was about making things right and preventing future harm. The settlement was finalized within a week. Brenda agreed to all terms. The money would be refunded within 60 days. The community service would begin immediately, and most importantly, the HOA bylaws were being completely rewritten. The new bylaws were actually pretty impressive. Ted and Joyce worked with Catherine Park and several residents, including Ray, to create real safeguards. Every fine now required a board vote. Financial statements would be published monthly on a website every resident could access. There was a new complaint process with multiple channels and term limits. No one could be president for more than 4 consecutive years. We should have done this years ago, Joyce admitted during one of the drafting sessions. But nobody wanted to rock the boat. That's how people like Brenda get power, Ray said. Good people staying quiet. As the HOA drama settled, Ray and Carol kicked their packing into high gear. The moving truck was scheduled for a Saturday in early November. The week before the move, something unexpected happened. Ray was loading boxes into Carol's car when George came over. Hey, don't make any plans for Friday night. Why? Just don't. Ray knew that look. He'd seen it on Carol's face before surprise birthday parties. George, I'd just be home at 6. Trust me. Friday at 6 p.m., Ray and Carol's doorbell started ringing and didn't stop. Neighbors poured in carrying food, drinks, and stories. It wasn't just a few people, it was practically the whole street. George had set up tables in the backyard. Mrs. Patterson brought her famous apple pie. Rebecca Torres made tamales. Ted and Joyce showed up with a cooler full of drinks. What is all this? Carol asked, completely surprised. It's a thank you, Ted said simply, and a goodbye. The party went on for hours. People shared stories about run-ins with Brenda that they'd never felt comfortable talking about before. The family who'd been fined for roses in their front yard brought photos of their garden. It was actually beautiful. The young couple with the stroller thanked Ray for standing up when they'd been too new to the neighborhood to know what was normal. Around 8 p.m., Ted tapped a glass to get everyone's attention. Okay. Speech time, Ray groaned. He hated speeches. Relax, Ted laughed. It's not you. Well, not just you. He pulled out a wooden plaque. On behalf of everyone in Riverside Meadows, we want to present this to Detective Chief Raymond Chen. It says, in appreciation for 32 years of service to this city, and for showing this neighborhood what real leadership looks like. Everyone applauded. Carol had tears in her eyes. Ray took the plaque, feeling its weight in his hands. "I didn't do anything special," Ray said quietly. "I just didn't let someone abuse their power. That's something any of you could have done." "But we didn't," Rebecca said. "You did. And that matters." Ray looked around at all these faces, neighbors he'd waved to for years but never really knew. People who'd lived in fear of breaking invisible rules. They looked different now, lighter somehow. "You know what?" Ray said. "The real victory here isn't that Brenda's gone. It's that you all found your voices. You stood up. You voted. You're changing the system so this can't happen again. That's what matters." More applause. Then George raised his glass. "To Ray and Carol, may your beach days be sunny and your HOA be reasonable." Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. The following Saturday, the moving truck pulled away with the last of their belongings. Ray and Carol did a final walkthrough of the empty house. Their footsteps echoed in the bare rooms. "Lot of memories here," Carol said softly. "Good ones," Ray agreed. "But new ones are waiting." As they drove away, Ray looked in the rearview mirror. Several neighbors were standing in their driveways, waving. Mrs. Patterson was on her porch with her walker. George had his hand up in salute. Even the young couple with the stroller had come out to wave goodbye. 2 hours later, Ray and Carol pulled up to their new condo. It was a modest 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor, with that balcony overlooking the ocean Carol had fallen in love with. They could hear the waves from the parking lot. They spent the afternoon unpacking the essentials. Around sunset, they took their coffee out to the balcony. The sky was painted orange and pink. Seagulls called in the distance. The ocean stretched out endlessly. "No HOA here," Carol said with a smile. "Well, there is one, but it's one of those reasonable ones that just maintains the building and doesn't harass anyone. Even better." Ray pulled out his phone to check messages and laughed. "Ted sent me a photo." Carol looked over his shoulder. It was a picture of the new HOA website, clean and professional, with transparent financial statements and a simple mission statement. "Serving our community with integrity and accountability." "They're really doing it," Carol said. "They really are." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ray thought about everything that had happened. A simple estate sale had turned into something bigger, not because he'd wanted it to, but because sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for everyone. He'd spent 32 years as a detective, solving crimes and seeking justice. Retirement was supposed to be about rest and relaxation. But maybe, Ray thought, seeking justice wasn't just a job, it was who he was. The ocean breeze was cool and salty. Carol rested her head on his shoulder. Tomorrow they'd explore the beach. Next week they'd find their favorite coffee shop. Eventually they'd settle into their new routine, but tonight Ray just sat there feeling grateful. Grateful for a wife who supported him. Grateful for neighbors who'd found their courage. Grateful for a career that had taught him to stand firm when it mattered. And grateful that somewhere back in Riverside Meadows, families were getting their money back, bylaws were being reformed, and nobody had to be afraid of their HOA president anymore. That, Ray thought, was a pretty good way to start retirement.